table is reserved for our party. You need to move.
I have a reservation. The hostess seated me here 10 minutes ago.
We booked this specific table weeks in advance. This is unacceptable.
Maybe you should speak to the staff because I'm not moving.
Don't you dare speak to me like that. Don't forget where you stand.
It was 7:30 on a Saturday evening at Bella Vista, a high-end Italian place by the water. And what should have been a calm dinner for a pediatric surgeon was moments away from becoming an online disaster. The restaurant was strangely quiet, with only a few tables filled during what was normally the busiest time. In just 2 minutes, 2 entitled women's racist outburst over a seating issue would be caught on the security cameras, racing across the internet and destroying both their careers. What they said to a doctor who only wanted to eat alone was so shockingly racist that the small number of diners froze in stunned silence. And the CCTV footage would guarantee consequences that would follow them for years. This wasn't just another Karen incident. This was job-ending, life-changing, permanent digital footprint-level racism captured in crystal-clear 4K on the restaurant's cameras. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're new, hit subscribe because you really don't want to miss how this situation unfolds. Trust me, the ending is absolutely worth it. The woman at the center of this mess was Jasmine Carter, a 35-year-old marketing executive who moved to the city 18 months earlier after getting promoted. She was celebrating her birthday at Bella Vista, a restaurant she'd been to twice before and considered fancy enough for her special night. Jasmine had booked a reservation for 2 people 3 weeks earlier, specifically asking for table 14, a prime window seat overlooking the harbor and the glowing city lights on the water. Jasmine was the type who loved arranging perfect moments, who filmed everything for social media, who expected every plan to go exactly the way she imagined. She showed up wearing an expensive cocktail dress, her designer purse on display, her expectations impossibly high. With her came her friend Ashley Morgan, a 41-year-old financial advisor who shared Jasmine's attitude and love for attention. Both women were styled to impress, ready to celebrate and take photos that would look flawless on Instagram. But when the hostess guided them toward their table, Jasmine froze. Someone was already sitting at table 14. Her name was Simone Jackson, a 38-year-old pediatric surgeon who had just finished a brutal 72-hour shift at Children's Hospital. She came to Bella Vista alone, treating herself to a nice meal after surviving one of the hardest weeks of her career. She had reserved a table for 1 at 7:15, and the hostess placed her at table 14, a small setup perfect for one diner but easily expanded for groups. Simone was tired yet peaceful, sipping wine and reading a medical journal on her tablet as she waited for her appetizer. She'd chosen this place because it was quiet enough to unwind but upscale enough to feel special. She needed this calm moment after the week she had survived, after the lives she had saved, after the families she had supported. She had no idea her quiet evening was about to become an internet nightmare. Jasmine marched straight to table 14, Ashley right behind her. They stood over the table, staring at Simone as if something was terribly wrong. Simone looked up from her tablet, confused by the 2 women looming above her. She offered a small, polite smile, the kind you give when you're not sure whether someone needs help. That's when Jasmine told her the table was theirs and she needed to move. Simone's smile disappeared. She set her wine glass down gently and explained that she had a reservation, and the hostess seated her here. Her voice stayed calm and steady, the tone of someone trained to stay grounded under pressure. But Jasmine didn't care for calm reasoning. Ashley stepped closer and said they had booked this exact table. She said it like it was earth-shattering, like their birthday dinner couldn't exist anywhere else in the entire restaurant. Simone held herself together. She suggested they talk to the staff, because she wasn't doing anything wrong by sitting where she'd been placed. Her voice stayed smooth, reasonable, the tone of someone trying to diffuse a fight that didn't need to happen. That's when Jasmine's tone turned sharp. She told Simone not to speak to her that way. And then she said the words that would ruin her life. She said, "People like Simone always forget their place." The line hung in the air like poison, dripping with disrespect and unmistakable racism, carrying through the quiet room and making the few diners freeze mid-bite and lift their heads. The security cameras across the dining room caught everything, every word, every look, every second of the scene. Someone at the bar stood up, startled. A server stopped walking. The atmosphere shifted instantly from relaxed dining to shared horror at what they had just heard. Have you ever been blamed for someone else's mistake? Tell me in the comments. At a nearby table, a couple celebrating their 10th anniversary watched the scene unfold. The husband, Michael Torres, a 42-year-old high school teacher, saw the argument begin and felt his concern grow. His wife, Jennifer, sat beside him, equally uneasy. The entire confrontation was being recorded by the restaurant security cameras, hidden throughout the room, saving everything in high definition from several angles. The manager, Anthony Ritchie, who had run Bella Vista for 15 years, rushed over. He was a professional who took pride in handling tense moments with kindness and skill. He reached the table with a friendly smile, asking how he could help. Jasmine immediately started complaining. She said she had reserved table 14, that it was her birthday, that this was unacceptable, and that the woman sitting there needed to be moved right now so they could have the table they'd chosen. Ashley nodded hard, insisting they had planned this evening for weeks. Anthony listened carefully, then asked Jasmine to show him the reservation. She pulled up the email on her phone, and it clearly read, "Party of 2, 7:30 p.m., table request noted." Anthony nodded and turned to Simone. He gently asked if she had a reservation as well. Simone showed her confirmation, which said, "Party of 1, 7:15 p.m., table 14. Anthony's expression shifted as he realized what had happened. He explained to the two women that although they had asked for table 14, it was listed as a preference, not a promise. The restaurant had seated a single diner there at 7:15 for a one-person reservation, which was normal procedure. He said there were several lovely window tables available, including table 16, which was actually bigger and had an even better view. This should have ended everything, a simple mix-up with a simple fix. Everyone returns to their dinners. But Jasmine didn't want answers. Her face flushed red with anger. She said that wasn't acceptable, that they had requested that specific table, that she'd planned this night for weeks, and that it was unprofessional to hand their table to someone else. The way she said someone else had a sting to it that made people within hearing distance uneasy. Ashley joined in, her voice rising. She talked about how much money they expected to spend, how they were regulars who'd been there twice, and how a restaurant of this level shouldn't offer service like this. The two women were causing a full scene now, their voices echoing through the quiet room. Anthony stayed calm, repeating that table 16 was available and even better. He offered to have the staff move the settings right away, and even offered a free bottle of wine for the trouble. Simone sat silently, her hands folded, watching this mess unfold around her. She never asked for any of this. She had done absolutely nothing wrong. But they clearly saw her as the problem, the obstacle blocking a flawless birthday night. Jasmine turned back to Simone. She said that the polite thing to do would be to switch tables on her own to show some respect and courtesy. She said
like Simone was being selfish just for sitting where she'd been placed. Simone inhaled slowly. She spoke to Anthony, not to the two women, saying she was comfortable at her table, that the hostess had seated her here, and that she saw no reason to move when she had done nothing wrong. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it now. That's when the women lost whatever control they had left. Jasmine started ranting about how people needed to learn respect, how some people thought they could take whatever they wanted, how she was tired of dealing with this behavior. Ashley nodded, throwing in her own remarks about certain people not understanding boundaries. And then, in front of Anthony, in front of the diners spread around the room, Jasmine said something that made everyone go silent. She told Simone that maybe if she spent less time eating at restaurants she couldn't afford and more time at places more fitting for her, situations like this wouldn't happen. Ashley laughed. Ashley laughed and said, "Exactly. People like her need to know their place." The entire restaurant froze. Someone gasped. A fork clattered against a plate. The few diners in the room stared in disbelief, unable to process what they'd just heard. Simone's fingers tightened on the edge of the table, her knuckles turning pale, but her expression stayed steady. This was a woman who had endured years of racism in medical school, in hospitals, and throughout her career. Someone who had built the emotional armor needed to survive in places where people doubted whether she belonged. She looked at both women and said quietly, "That was racist," and everyone heard it. Jasmine and Ashley's faces went pale, then flushed red, then pale again. You could almost see the moment they understood what they had said out loud in public with cameras rolling. But instead of apologizing, Jasmine dug in deeper. She claimed she wasn't racist, she was just being honest, and accused Simone of being too sensitive. Ashley immediately echoed her, saying they were only trying to celebrate a birthday and were being treated badly. Anthony's professional patience finally broke. His voice turned firm as he told both women they had to leave the restaurant right away. He said their behavior was unacceptable, their comments inappropriate, and that they were no longer welcome at Bella Vista. Both women's mouths dropped open. They couldn't believe they were being removed. Jasmine sputtered that she was the customer, that she had a reservation, that she was the one being mistreated. Ashley tried playing the victim too, insisting the situation was unfair and that they were being targeted. The irony didn't even register with them. Anthony was already pulling out his phone, calling the police to issue a trespass warning. The women raised their voices even more, making the scene worse. They pointed at Simone and insisted this was all her fault, that she ruined their evening, that she should be ashamed. They fueled each other's outrage, sending the situation spiraling. Do you think Jasmine and Ashley realized the damage they had done, or were they too entitled to see it? Share your thoughts below. The restaurant's security system captured every second. Multiple cameras set around the dining room recorded the women's racist statements in sharp high definition, their refusal to leave, Anthony's steady handling of the confrontation, and Simone sitting quietly with tears slipping down her cheeks, trying to hold on to her dignity as two grown women publicly humiliated her. Every word, every expression, every moment was saved by the restaurant's CCTV. The police arrived in 8 minutes. 2 officers, both with body cameras running, entered the restaurant and immediately sized up the situation. Anthony met them and explained what had happened, showing Simone's reservation and describing how both women made racist remarks and refused to leave when asked. The officers walked up to Jasmine and Ashley, who instantly tried to cast themselves as the victims. They said they were the ones discriminated against, that the restaurant had stolen their table, that they were being targeted unfairly. They talked over each other, each trying to tell her story first, creating even more confusion. One of the officers, a woman named Officer Chin, asked if any video existed. Anthony explained that the entire exchange had been recorded by the restaurant's cameras. He opened the footage on his office computer, and the officers watched it right there. Officer Chin kept her expression even, calm, but when she turned back to the 2 women, something in her tone had shifted. She asked why they made those remarks about Simone. She asked why they refused to sit at another table. She asked why they were refusing to leave after being told to do so. Neither woman had real answers. Jasmine claimed the clip was taken out of context. Ashley said they never said what everyone clearly heard on the audio. They kept insisting everyone was unfair to them, but the evidence was overwhelming. Multiple angles, witness statements, everything matching perfectly. The officers told them they were receiving trespass warnings and had to leave immediately. Jasmine began crying, though it seemed more like an attempt to gain sympathy than true emotion. She kept saying it wasn't fair, that it was her birthday, that she hadn't done anything wrong. Ashley stayed quieter, but just as stubborn, arms crossed, muttering about lawyers. But fairness was Simone sitting in a seat where she'd been placed. Fairness was security cameras capturing the truth when a person revealed who they really were. Fairness was facing consequences for racism. The officers escorted both women toward the exit. The walk to the door felt painfully slow. The few diners watched them leave. It was a level of public embarrassment neither woman had ever faced, and you could see them shrinking with each step. Outside, as the officers filled out the trespass paperwork, both women kept insisting they'd done nothing wrong. Jasmine said Simone was rude first. Ashley said they were only defending themselves. They claimed the situation was exaggerated. Their body cameras captured every attempt to rewrite what had happened. Back inside, Anthony approached Simone's table. He apologized deeply for everything, saying behavior like that was absolutely not allowed at Bella Vista. He told her that dinner would be fully taken care of, that he was shocked by what she had gone through, and that she would always be welcome in their restaurant. Simone brushed away her tears, pulled in a shaky breath, and thanked him quietly. But anyone could see the tiredness in her eyes, the heavy strain of having to deal with all this, the anger of watching a peaceful night ruined by someone else's racism. She asked Anthony if it was all right for her to leave, saying she didn't think she could enjoy her meal anymore. Anthony understood without hesitation, but he gently asked if she could stay just a few more minutes. He stepped into the kitchen and returned with the head chef, Maria, who had been at Bella Vista since the first day it opened. Maria sat down across from Simone, and for the next 20 minutes they simply talked. Maria opened up about her own run-ins with discrimination. Anthony explained how they would use this moment to train their staff better, and slowly Simone's shoulders eased. She chose to stay and finish her dinner after all. And as whispers spread through the dining room about what had happened and who Simone was, a pediatric surgeon who saved children's lives, other guests began stopping by her table. They apologized for what she endured. They thanked her for all she did. They told her she deserved far more kindness. One couple paid for her meal before Anthony could cancel the bill. Another ordered dessert for her. By the time the night ended, Simone
Had gone from being embarrassed in public to being surrounded by compassion. But the sting of the incident stayed with her. The security footage from that night soon slipped onto the internet. A worried staff member who saw what happened shared it with a local reporter, and from there it spread everywhere. By the next morning, the clear CCTV video showing both women's racist outbursts had been picked up by several news stations and blasted across every social app. The video blew up instantly. In 3 hours, it hit 100,000 views. By morning, it passed 2 million. By Sunday afternoon, it had spread across all major platforms, watched over 15 million times, and carried by local and national media. The comments were harsh. People were furious at the women's actions, their obvious racism, their total lack of awareness. The footage was so sharp, their words so undeniable, that even the usual both sides crowd had no angle to defend them. News outlets learned Simone's identity and asked for interviews. She agreed to speak with one local channel, where she described the incident with the same calm and grace she had shown the entire time. She explained that situations like this happened far more often than people wanted to admit, that Black professionals constantly faced doubts about whether they belonged in certain places, and that she hoped the video would help people recognize everyday racism. Reporters also tried speaking to both women, waiting outside their homes for comments. Both refused to answer, hiding behind big sunglasses and rushing into their cars whenever cameras appeared. Jasmine posted a long message online that only made the situation worse. Ashley didn't say anything at first, but her social media history was quickly uncovered and examined. In her post, Jasmine insisted she was the target of an online mob, that her words were twisted, and that she was being unfairly attacked for simply celebrating her birthday. She ignored the racist remarks she had made. She offered no genuine apology. She painted herself as a victim of cancel culture. Ashley's old posts soon spread online, revealing troubling beliefs that made her part in the incident feel less shocking. The internet tore apart their statements within minutes. People posted side-by-side clips of what they claimed happened versus what the footage clearly captured from multiple cameras. The outrage only grew stronger. Then online investigators stepped in. Within hours, people identified both women's workplaces through their LinkedIn pages. Jasmine was a senior marketing director for a nationwide retail brand called TrendStyle. Ashley worked as a financial advisor at a firm named Preston & Associates. Both companies' social media pages were immediately bombarded with comments, emails, and messages demanding they respond to their employees' racist actions. By Monday morning, both TrendStyle and Preston & Associates were scrambling to control the damage. Jasmine's behavior completely contradicted TrendStyle's public promises about diversity and inclusivity. Ashley's remarks were equally harmful for a company that handled clients from different walks of life. By Monday afternoon, TrendStyle issued a statement. "We have reviewed the footage circulating online involving one of our employees. The actions and remarks shown are entirely against our company values and our promise to treat every person with dignity and respect. Jasmine Carter was no longer employed at TrendStyle. The decision was immediate, and Preston and Associates released their own announcement only hours later. Ashley Morgan's conduct, as shown in the video, did not match their organization's values or their promise to treat every person with respect. She was dismissed on the spot. The two firings quickly became national news. Employment experts argued on television about whether the actions were legally justified. Most people online supported the companies, saying that choices carry consequences and workplaces shouldn't keep employees who openly display racist behavior. But losing their jobs wasn't their only fallout. Several people who once called the women acquaintances made public posts distancing themselves, expressing shock and disappointment. The two women ended up losing not just their careers, but their social circles as well. Meanwhile, Bella Vista Restaurant was met with overwhelming praise. Their bookings doubled. People were calling purely because they had watched how the management took a stand. Anthony gave interviews commending his staff and repeating that every guest deserved kindness and dignity in his establishment. The clear security footage almost acted like an unofficial promotion for doing what was right, showing how a small business took a firm stand against racism, even though it might have been simpler to move Simone to a different table and avoid conflict. Local civil rights groups contacted Simone, offering assistance and asking if she wanted to take legal action. After meeting with attorneys, Simone decided to file a civil lawsuit against both Jasmine and Ashley for intentional emotional harm, defamation, and violation of her rights in a public accommodation. The civil process lasted 8 months. Both women initially fought the claims, insisting they hadn't broken any laws, that their comments weren't racist, and that the whole thing was blown out of proportion. But their own lawyers eventually warned them that a trial would involve replaying the security footage in court, expert analysis, and massive media attention. The lawsuit was settled privately for an undisclosed amount, though people familiar with the case suggested the combined payment was in the 6-figure range. The agreement required both women to release public apologies and complete an approved anti-racism education program. When their apologies finally appeared, they sounded more sincere than their early defensive posts. Still, many questioned whether their words reflected true understanding or just legal pressure to comply. The emotional toll on Simone was heavy. She gave multiple interviews describing the psychological impact of the experience, explaining that being publicly degraded and targeted with racial hostility in a place meant for comfort had deeply shaken her. She talked about the anxiety she now felt walking into restaurants, the constant awareness of whether she belonged, and the draining challenge of facing racism while also carrying the responsibility of saving children's lives. But she turned her pain into purpose. She teamed up with several organizations to develop training tools for restaurant workers to help them recognize and prevent discrimination. She spoke at major conferences about hidden bias in customer service environments. She launched a scholarship program for Black students entering medical careers, funded partly through her settlement money. The security footage from that night soon became a common teaching example in diversity training courses throughout the hospitality field. Restaurant associations used the video to guide managers and staff on the correct ways to respond to discrimination complaints. Business programs used it to teach crisis handling and values-driven leadership. Michael Torres, the high school teacher celebrating his anniversary that night, later gave interviews about what he witnessed. He emphasized how important it is to speak up when injustice happens, even if you aren't the one being targeted. He added lessons on bystander responsibility to his civics curriculum, using the Bella Vista incident as a real-life example of standing up against racism. Bella Vista created the Simone Jackson Award, given each year to a healthcare worker in the community, including a $5,000 donation to a charity of their choice and a full year of complimentary dining. It was their way of honoring Simone and creating something meaningful out of an awful moment. 3 years later, a local news station produced
An update. Simone was still a pediatric surgeon, still saving young lives, still contributing to her community. She had worked through the trauma with therapy and the support of those around her. And although she said the memory of that night would never fade completely, it no longer controlled her. She continued her advocacy and had become a respected voice on confronting racism in professional settings. Both Jasmine and Ashley eventually moved to different states, working in lower-level jobs compared to the careers they once had. The digital trail from that night followed them everywhere, making it nearly impossible to rise back to their former positions.
People who knew them said both women were still resentful about what happened, never fully accepting responsibility for their own behavior. Meanwhile, Bella Vista continued to grow, known not only for delicious Italian dishes, but also for standing firm on treating every guest with fairness and respect. Anthony Ritchie retired after 4 decades in the restaurant world, and in his final interview, he reflected on that night. He said it was one of the proudest moments of his career, choosing to defend someone's dignity even when it would have been simpler to just avoid the confrontation. The story of what happened that Saturday evening is ultimately about dignity, accountability, and the choices people make when they think no one will challenge them. It shows how quickly a small disagreement can turn into a defining moment. It shows how racism can hide behind polite requests until it suddenly becomes impossible to ignore, especially when cameras are recording from every angle. Jasmine and Ashley walked into Bella Vista believing their celebration mattered more than another customer's right to enjoy dinner. They believed that wanting a certain table gave them permission to confront someone and speak to her as if she didn't belong. They believed their status allowed them to talk down to Simone. They were painfully mistaken. Their brief outbursts of entitlement and racism cost them nearly everything: their careers, their reputations, the trust of friends, and even their financial stability. The security footage became a permanent record that will follow them for years, resurfacing every time someone searches their names. Simone simply wanted a quiet night after a long week of saving children's lives. She deserved to sit where she was seated. She deserved to enjoy her dinner without being questioned, belittled, or told to know her place. The fact that she had to defend herself at all, that she had to endure humiliation in public, is proof that there is still so much work to be done. But the firings, the legal settlement, the damage to the women's reputations, and the overwhelming support for Simone show that consequences are real. They show that businesses can take a stand, that security footage can expose the truth, and that public racism does not go unanswered. So, what do you think? Did Jasmine and Ashley receive the consequences they earned, or do you think it went too far? Have you ever seen something like this happen in a restaurant before? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story meant something to you, make sure you share it with others, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stories like Simone's matter, and people like Jasmine and Ashley need to understand that in today's world, security cameras are everywhere. Everything is recorded, and accountability is very real. In the end, Simone just wanted to eat her dinner. She wanted a peaceful moment after a demanding week. She did not deserve to be told she didn't belong. She did not deserve to have her night ruined because of someone else's assumptions and prejudice. The fact that protecting something so basic required security footage, police involvement, legal action, and national attention shows how far society still has to go. But each time someone sees that footage, each time a restaurant staff member remembers how Bella Vista responded, each time a person stops and thinks before making assumptions about who belongs somewhere, that's progress. That's the impact of accountability. That's why these stories matter. See you in the next one.